The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute financial, legal, or academic advising. Scholarship criteria, availability, and federal regulations regarding student aid are subject to change and vary significantly by institution and state. You should conduct your own due diligence and consult with a certified financial planner or a university financial aid officer before making significant educational or financial decisions. Every year, billions of dollars in scholarship funding go completely unclaimed in the United States. While the average student is staring down a six-figure debt trap, a small percentage of applicants are essentially getting paid to attend university. There is a persistent myth in this country that scholarships are a reward for being a genius or a star athlete. That myth is the primary reason why the student debt crisis has ballooned to over $1.7 trillion. The reality is far more clinical and, frankly, far more accessible. Scholarships are not gifts from benevolent institutions. They are strategic financial instruments used by universities, corporations, and private foundations to achieve specific demographic, academic, or marketing goals. If you understand the mechanics of how these funds are allocated, you stop being a beggar and start being a candidate. We are going to deconstruct the entire American scholarship ecosystem, from the internal discount rates of Ivy League endowments to the obscure niche foundations that are desperate to give money away to anyone who fits their narrow criteria. By the end of this deep dive, the way you look at a college tuition bill will be permanently altered. The problem we are solving today is the information asymmetry that keeps the middle class tethered to high-interest student loans. Most families approach the scholarship process like a lottery, throwing out a few random applications to the most famous programs, and then wondering why they received a generic rejection letter. This video is a masterclass in the optimization phase of higher education. We are moving past the surface-level advice you find on high school guidance counselor posters. We are going into the data, the historical trends of merit-based aid, and the specific case studies of students who leveraged multiple stackable awards to achieve a net zero cost of attendance. If you are a high school student, a returning adult learner, or a parent looking at a $400,000 four-year price tag, this is the blueprint for navigating the most complex financial aid system in the world. To understand how scholarships actually work, we first have to look at the institutional discount rate. This is a term most people never hear, but it is the heartbeat of university finance. When a private college lists its tuition at $60,000 a year, that is essentially a sticker price. According to historical trends from the National Association of College and University Business Officers, the average discount rate for first-time, full-time undergraduates at private colleges has climbed to over 50%. This means that for every dollar a college charges, they are often giving 50 cents back in the form of institutional grants and scholarships. Why do they do this? It is a pricing strategy known as high tuition, high aid. It allows the university to maintain a prestigious price point while actually competing for the students they want. When you receive a merit scholarship from a college, you aren't just being rewarded for your GPA. You are being recruited. The school has a specific profile they need to fill to maintain their rankings. Perhaps they need more STEM majors, more students from the West Coast, or more students with a specific musical talent. Your scholarship is the incentive they use to win you over from a rival institution. Plus one. But the institutional side is only one pillar. To truly master this, you have to understand the three distinct tiers of the scholarship world. Tier 1 consists of federal and state-funded aid. This is the foundation. It is governed by the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. While many think of this only as need-based aid, the FAFSA is the gatekeeper for everything else. Without it, you cannot access the Pell Grant or state-specific programs like the Hope Scholarship in Georgia or the Cal Grant in California. These are statutory programs. If you meet the criteria, which are usually a combination of residency, income levels, and a baseline GPA, the money is yours by right of law. However, because these are public funds, they are the most heavily regulated and the least flexible. Tier 2 is institutional aid. This is where the real full-ride stories usually live. These funds come directly from the university's endowment or their operating budget. This is where we see the distinction between need-blind and need-aware admissions. A need-blind institution like Harvard or Stanford makes admission decisions without looking at your bank account and then uses their multi-billion-dollar endowments to meet 100% of your demonstrated financial need. A need-aware institution might love your application but realize they don't have enough scholarship budget left to bridge the gap for you, which can affect your admission chances. Understanding which category a school falls into is the difference between a successful strategy and a wasted application fee. Within this tier, you also find departmental scholarships. These are the hidden gems. A university might have a general scholarship fund, but the School of Engineering or the Department of Classics often has its own private endowments left by alumni. These have significantly less competition because they are only open to students within that specific major. Tier 3 is the Wild West of the scholarship world, private and external scholarships. This includes everything from the massive, highly competitive programs like the Coca-Cola Scholars or the Gates Millennium Scholars, down to the small-scale local awards. Think of the local Rotary Club, the town's Chamber of Commerce, or a regional credit union. While the Tier 1 and Tier 2 funds are often credited directly to your tuition bill, Tier 3 funds are where scholarship displacement becomes a critical risk. This is a technical nuance that catches thousands of students off guard. If you win a $5,000 private scholarship from a local business, some universities will simply reduce your institutional aid by that same $5,000. They essentially take your hard-earned win and use it to save themselves money. To navigate this, you must look for scholarship-friendly institutions or learn the specific wording to request that the private funds be applied to your self-help portion of the financial aid package, meaning your loans or work study, rather than your grants. Let's look at a case study of how these tiers stack in a real-world scenario. Consider a student we will call Applicant A. They applied to a mid-tier private university with a sticker price of $55,000. Through the FAFSA, they qualify for a small federal grant. The university, seeing their high SAT scores, offers a $25,000 Presidential Merit Award. Now the price is down to $25,000. The student then applies to 5 local scholarships in their hometown, winning 3 of them for a total of $7,000. Because they specifically targeted a university that allows stacking, that $7,000 is applied to their remaining balance. They are now at $18,000. Finally, they apply for a departmental scholarship within the chemistry department, which they are eligible for because of their intended major, and secure an additional $10,000. The final out-of-pocket cost is $8,000, less than the cost of a local community college, despite attending a prestigious private university. This is the stacking method, and it is the primary way that savvy students bypass the student loan system. To execute this, you have to understand the timeline. Most people start looking for scholarships in the spring of their senior year. By then, 90% of the money is already gone. The institutional priority deadlines usually fall in November or December. If you miss that window, you are essentially fighting for the leftovers. The high-level strategy involves a 2-year lead time. You aren't just finding scholarships. You are building a profile that matches what the specific scholarship committees are looking for. In the subsequent parts of this deep dive, we are going to break down the specific algorithms used by scholarship search engines, how to write an essay that triggers the automatic merit filters, and how to negotiate your financial aid package using a competing offer strategy. This is not about luck. This is about understanding a high-stakes financial system and positioning yourself as the most logical investment for these institutions. The money exists. The question is whether you have the technical knowledge to go and collect it. To understand the technical knowledge required to collect these funds, we have to look at the scholarship ecosystem as a data-driven marketplace. Imagine a student in 2026 named Marcus, a high school senior in Columbus, Ohio. Marcus has a 3.8 GPA and a solid interest in renewable energy. Most students in Marcus's position would spend their Saturday afternoon scrolling through a massive scholarship search engine, applying to the first 10 results that mention engineering. This is a common historical trend that leads to a high volume of rejection letters. Why? Because Marcus is competing against 50,000 other students with the exact same profile for a single $1,000 award from a national brand. To change the potential outcomes, Marcus needs to look at the Internal Revenue Service Form 990. This is a public document that every nonprofit organization, including private scholarship foundations, must file annually. These forms disclose exactly how much money a foundation gave away in the previous year, and more importantly, how many recipients they funded. If a foundation has $2 million in assets but only awarded 5 scholarships last year, the competition is statistically overwhelming. If that same foundation awarded 400 scholarships of $5,000 each, the mathematical probability of success shifts significantly in the applicant's favor. This leads us to the mechanics of the merit-based scholarship filter. In the United States, large-scale institutional scholarships are often processed by an applicant tracking system, or ATS, similar to what Fortune 500 companies use for hiring. When a university receives 60,000 applications, a human being is not reading every single line of every single essay in the first round. Instead, the system scans for specific keywords and data points. If a university is trying to grow its aerospace program in 2026, the ATS is programmed to flag mentions of flight clubs, physics competitions, or internships at local aviation firms. If your application lacks these specific lexical triggers, it may never reach the desk of a scholarship officer, regardless of how high your GPA is. This is not about being a genius. It is about search engine optimization for your own life. You are essentially reverse engineering the university's strategic plan. By looking at a college's recent press releases or their 5-year capital campaign goals, you can see exactly where they are investing their money. If they just broke ground on a new center for cybersecurity, they are highly likely to have a surplus of scholarship funds specifically allocated for students in that field to ensure the new building is full of high-achieving talent. Let's examine a case study involving the concept of the regional talent gap. A student named Sarah lives in a highly competitive district in Northern Virginia. Her 4.2 weighted GPA is actually average for her specific zip code. If Sarah applies to a university in Washington, D.C., she is just one of many high achievers. However, if Sarah applies to a high-quality university in the Midwest or the Deep South, she represents a geographic diversity win for that institution. Universities in the United States often use scholarships as a tool for regional balancing. They want to be able to tell their board of trustees that their freshman class represents 45 different states. For a school in Alabama, a high-achieving student from Virginia is a valuable asset for their marketing materials. Historically, students who apply to schools where they are in the top 10% of the applicant pool, not just academically, but geographically and demographically, see much higher institutional aid offers. This is the concept of being a big fish in a smaller pond, and it is a calculated financial move that can result in a net cost reduction of tens of thousands of dollars per year. Now, consider the mechanics of the private foundation niche. There is a historical trend of foundations being established with extremely specific, sometimes bizarre, criteria. There are scholarships exclusively for left-handed students, for descendants of specific military regiments, or for people who have spent a certain number of hours volunteering in a niche field like equestrian therapy. The reason these funds often go unclaimed is that the search cost for the student is higher than the perceived value of the award. But in 2026, with the integration of advanced data sorting, the strategy is to aggregate these small, non-competitive awards. While a $500 scholarship seems insignificant compared to a $70,000 tuition bill, that $500 covers your books for a semester. If you secure 10 of these niche awards, you have covered your room and board. This is what we call the micro-scholarship strategy. It requires a high-volume, low-friction approach where the student develops a core narrative, a single, powerful essay that can be modularly adapted for 20 different small foundations with minimal effort. Step by step, the process of navigating these private funds starts with a local to national audit. You begin at the high school guidance office, not the internet. You look for the paper applications that have been sitting in a folder for 3 years. These are the awards funded by the local Elks Lodge or the town's gardening club. These organizations often struggle to find even 3 applicants. Then you move to the employer level. Many parents in the United States are unaware that their own companies offer dependent scholarships. Corporations like Starbucks, Walmart, and various trade unions have multi-million-dollar scholarship funds that are strictly limited to the children of their employees. These have a much higher success rate because the applicant pool is naturally restricted to a specific workforce. Only after exhausting these hyperlocal and employment-based leads do you move to the national stage where the competition becomes exponential. However, even if you secure the funding, you must understand the cost of attendance or COA. This is a legal limit set by the federal government. A student cannot receive more total financial aid, including scholarships, grants, and loans, than the university's official COA. If the COA is $40,000 and you receive $45,000 in total aid, the university is legally required to take $5,000 back. This is where the strategy of negotiation and appeal comes into play. If a student receives a better merit offer from a direct competitor school, they can often bring that offer to their first-choice university's financial aid office. This is not a bargain in the traditional sense. It is a professional judgment review. You are providing the university with new data that suggests your market value as a student is higher than their initial assessment. Case studies have shown that a well-documented appeal, citing specific financial changes or competing offers, can result in an institutional aid increase of $2,000 to $5,000 per year. As we look closer at these institutional tactics, we have to address the reality of how the FAFSA calculates your expected family contribution, now known as the Student Aid Index or SAI. This number is the pivot point for every dollar you will or will not receive from the government. In 2026, the formulas have become even more sensitive to specific types of assets and income. Understanding how to legally and ethically position your family's finances before the base year of the FAFSA is the difference between qualifying for a Pell Grant or being left to fund the entire degree through private loans. But what happens when the university's math doesn't match your reality? What happens when a scholarship you were counting on is suddenly revoked because of a minor change in your credit hours? There is a hidden layer of compliance and fine print that determines whether that money actually stays in your bank account or disappears after the first semester. We need to look at the retention requirements and the cliff effect that many students fall into during their sophomore year, which we will deconstruct as we move into the actual application of these strategies. If you think getting the scholarship is the hard part, wait until you see the systems designed to take it back. The systems designed to take scholarship money back are often hidden in the fine print of the award letter, a document most students sign in a state of euphoria without a second glance. This is where we encounter the phenomenon of the front-loaded financial aid package. Historically, many universities have practiced a strategy where they offer a generous scholarship for the first year to secure the student's enrollment, only to have that funding diminish or disappear in subsequent years. Imagine a student in 2026 named Chloe, who receives a $15,000 merit scholarship to a prestigious private university. She assumes this is a $60,000 four-year commitment. However, tucked away in the terms and conditions is a requirement to maintain a 3.5 cumulative GPA and complete 30 credit hours per academic year. If Chloe hits a difficult sophomore year with a heavy science load and her GPA dips to a 3.4, that $15,000 award could vanish instantly. This is known as the scholarship cliff. The university knows that once a student is 2 years into a degree, they are statistically unlikely to transfer, even if their costs skyrocket. They have become a captive customer. To avoid this outcome, you must perform a technical audit of the renewal criteria. This involves looking at the distinction between a GPA contingent award and a participation contingent award. For example, some scholarships are tied to a specific major. If you start as a pre-med student with a science-backed scholarship and decide to switch to graphic design, you may lose 100% of that funding. Case studies show that students who negotiate for a 3.0 renewal threshold instead of a 3.5 have a significantly higher rate of degree completion without incurring additional debt. You have to ask the Financial Aid Office for the historical retention rate of their merit scholars. If a school tells you that only 40% of their scholarship recipients keep their funding all 4 years, that is a massive red flag. You are looking for transparency regarding the grace period. Does the university offer a probationary semester if your grades slip? Or is the funding cut off immediately? In 2026, many savvy applicants are now requesting that their award letters include a commitment to inflationary adjustments, ensuring that if tuition rises by 4% next year, their scholarship amount rises proportionally to maintain its relative value. Beyond the university's own rules, we have to look at the federal SAP standards, satisfactory academic progress. This is the baseline legal requirement to keep any form of federal or state-funded aid. If you drop below a certain number of credits, you are no longer considered a full-time student, and your Pell Grant or federal loans can be prorated or canceled entirely. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. A student struggles in a class, drops it to save their GPA, falls below full-time status, loses their scholarship, and then cannot afford to pay for the next semester. To navigate this, you must understand the credit completion ratio. Most federal guidelines require you to complete at least 67% of the credits you attempt. If you enroll in 15 credits but only pass 9, you have fallen below the threshold. Understanding this math is vital for survival in the American higher education system. Now, let's pivot to the mechanics of the scholarship displacement policy, which we touched on earlier but need to deconstruct with surgical precision. Imagine a student named Jordan who works tirelessly to win a $2,500 award from a local community foundation in 2026. When Jordan reports this to his university, the school reduces his institutional grant by exactly $2,500. On paper, Jordan's total aid remains the same, but the university has effectively stolen his hard-earned private scholarship to pad their own bottom line. This is a common historical trend in institutional accounting. However, some states like Maryland and Washington have recently passed laws to limit this practice. If you are not in one of those states, you must employ the cost of attendance appeal. By providing receipts for a new laptop, required software for a major, or higher than expected travel expenses, you can technically increase your official cost of attendance. This creates a larger bucket that allows you to keep both the university's money and the private scholarship money without hitting the federal over-award limit. This leads us to the technicality of taxable scholarship income. Many students and parents in the United States are under the impression that all scholarship money is tax-free. This is a dangerous misconception. According to the IRS, scholarship funds used for tuition, fees, books, and required equipment are generally tax-exempt. However, any portion of a scholarship used for room and board, travel, or incidental living expenses is considered taxable income. In 2026, if a student receives a full-ride scholarship that covers a $15,000 housing and meal plan, that $15,000 must be reported on their tax return. This can result in a surprise tax bill of several $1,000s in April. For a student with zero liquid savings, this is a financial disaster. Step by step, the way to mitigate this is to ensure that the university applies your tax-free institutional grants to tuition first and reserves any private, potentially taxable funds for the non-exempt categories. This requires a level of communication with the bursar's office that most students never even consider. +1. Another layer of the scholarship machinery is the athletic and activity-based contract. These are often the most fragile forms of funding. Historically, an injury on the field or a disagreement with a coach can lead to the immediate termination of a scholarship. In 2026, the landscape of collegiate athletics has been transformed by NIL name, image, and likeness rights. While NIL allows students to earn money from endorsements, it has also caused many universities to shift their internal scholarship budgets. Some schools are actually reducing their traditional athletic scholarship count because they expect boosters to cover those costs via nil collectives. This creates a high-stakes environment where a student's education is tied to their marketing value. If you are an athlete or a musician, you must look for guaranteed for injury clauses in your contract. Without this, one torn ligament could mean the end of your college career and the beginning of a massive debt load. We also have to discuss the role of the CSS profile. While the FAFSA is the federal standard, nearly 400 private colleges and scholarship programs use the College Scholarship Service Profile, managed by the College Board. The CSS profile is far more invasive than the FAFSA. It looks at the equity in your primary home, the value of your retirement accounts in some cases, and even the financial status of non-custodial parents. If your parents are divorced, the FAFSA generally only cares about the parent you lived with the most. The CSS profile, however, often demands full financial disclosure from both biological parents, regardless of their current relationship or legal agreements. This non-custodial parent waiver is one of the most difficult documents to secure in the entire financial aid world. Case studies show that families who fail to prepare for the CSS profile's deeper dive often find themselves gapped, where the university's calculation of what the family can afford is vastly higher than the family's actual liquid cash flow. +1. Understanding these administrative hurdles is just the defensive side of the game. To go on the offensive, you have to understand the specific timing of the fiscal year for foundations. Many private organizations have a use it or lose it policy regarding their scholarship disbursements. If they haven't awarded their full budget by a certain date, they become significantly more flexible with their criteria. There are also second-chance scholarship windows that open in the late spring and early summer for students who have already been accepted, but are facing a sudden change in financial circumstances. This is the late-cycle strategy that can bridge the final gap between a tuition bill and an empty bank account. As we move forward, we are going to look at the actual writing and positioning of the application itself. Most people think a scholarship essay is about your accomplishments. They are wrong. A scholarship essay is a feasibility study for a donor's investment. We are going to look at the 3 specific narrative archetypes that trigger a positive response from selection committees, and the one fatal flaw that causes 70% of applications to be discarded in the first 10 seconds. But before we get to the writing, we have to talk about the shadow network of scholarships, the ones that are never posted on a website, never mentioned in a brochure, and are only accessible through a specific type of professional networking that most 18-year-olds haven't been taught. This is the world of endowed direct action awards, and if you don't know who to talk to, you're leaving thousands of dollars on the table before you even set foot on campus. We're going to dive into how to identify these ghost awards and the exact script to use when contacting the people who control them. The world of ghost awards is perhaps the most overlooked sector of the American scholarship landscape. These are not secret societies, but rather endowed direct action awards that are managed internally by specific university departments or local community foundations that do not have the marketing budget to promote them. Historically, these funds are the result of a specific donor's bequest, perhaps a local business leader who graduated in 1964 and wanted to support students from their specific neighborhood who are majoring in a niche field like civil engineering or agricultural science. Because these awards are often managed by a single professor or a part-time administrator, they are rarely listed on major scholarship aggregate sites. To find them, you must employ the departmental deep dive. Imagine a student in 2026 named Ethan. Ethan has been accepted into the College of Forestry at a large state university, while the general university scholarship portal told him he didn't qualify for any major awards. Ethan takes a different approach. He goes to the university's official website and navigates past the admissions page, past the financial aid page, and directly to the College of Forestry's faculty directory. He looks for the undergraduate program coordinator. This is the person who often sits on the committee that decides how to distribute the interest earned from the department's private endowment. Ethan sends a professional, data-driven email. He doesn't ask for money. He asks for a list of departmental awards that require a separate application. Historical trends show that departments often have leftover funds in these niche accounts because students simply don't know they exist. In some case studies, students have secured $3,000 to $5,000 just by being the only person to ask for the application before the internal deadline. The script for this interaction is critical. You aren't begging. You are inquiring about institutional opportunities. You might say, "I am an incoming student for the fall 2026 semester, and I am conducting a thorough review of the departmental endowments within the School of Architecture. Could you provide a list of the specific criteria for the endowed scholarships managed by this department, and are there any that traditionally see a low volume of applicants?" This specific phrasing signals to the administrator that you are a high-level candidate who understands the mechanics of university finance. It moves you from the general pile of applicants into the category of a serious scholar. This leads us into the narrative archetypes of successful scholarship applications. Most students treat an essay like a resume in prose form. They list their GPA, their varsity sports, and their volunteer hours. This is the fatal flaw. Selection committees already have your transcripts. They don't need a summary of them. Instead, they are looking for a return on investment. You must position yourself within one of three archetypes. The first is the problem solver. This is the student who identifies a specific challenge in their community or field of study and demonstrates how they have already begun to address it. Case studies of successful Gates Millennium Scholars show a consistent trend. They don't just talk about being leaders, they provide data on the impact of their leadership. If you organized a food drive, don't just say you helped the hungry. State that you managed a logistics chain that provided 1,200 pounds of protein to 150 families over a 6-month period. Committees love quantifiable metrics. The second archetype is the resilient pioneer. This is not just about having a difficult life. It is about the specific cognitive and emotional tools you develop to overcome a systemic barrier. In 2026, with the increased focus on holistic admissions, committees are looking for evidence of grit. However, there is a technical way to write this without falling into the trap of trauma dumping. You must use the 20 to 80 rule. Spend 20% of the essay describing the challenge and 80% describing the specific actions you took to navigate it, and the lessons you are now applying to your academic career. For example, if a student like Maya grew up in a household with limited financial resources, she shouldn't just focus on the lack of money. She should focus on how she learned to navigate complex federal systems, manage a part-time job while maintaining a high GPA, and how that financial literacy will make her a more effective economics major. The third archetype is the niche specialist. This is the student who has a hyper-focused interest that aligns perfectly with the donor's legacy. If a scholarship is funded by a foundation dedicated to the history of the American West, your essay shouldn't be a general statement about loving history. It should be a deep dive into your specific research on irrigation rights in the 19th century Colorado River Basin. You are showing the donor that their money is going to someone who will literally carry their passion into the next generation. This level of specificity makes you nearly impossible to replace with another candidate. To back these narratives up, you need a technical letters of recommendation strategy. Most students ask a teacher 2 weeks before the deadline. A professional scholarship hunter starts this process 6 months in advance. You provide your recommenders with a brag sheet that is categorized by the scholarship's specific values. If the scholarship emphasizes community service, your brag sheet for that teacher should highlight every service project you did in their class. You are essentially ghostwriting the framework of the letter to ensure that the teacher hits the exact keywords the scholarship committee's ATS, or human reviewers, are looking for. Now let's talk about the data of the YS essay. Many institutional scholarships require an essay on why you want to attend that specific university. This is where most students lose the money. They write generic fluff about the beautiful campus or the great reputation. To win the high-value merit awards, you must go into the university's strategic plan. Every university has one. It's a public document outlining their goals for the next 5 to 10 years. If the university's plan emphasizes internationalization and study abroad programs, your essay should detail exactly how you plan to utilize their specific satellite campus in Madrid to further your research in bilingual education. You are proving that your presence on campus helps the university achieve its own measurable goals. This makes giving you a scholarship a strategic win for the admissions office. But even with the perfect essay and the perfect letter, there is a technicality that can disqualify you instantly: the verification process. In 2026, the Department of Education has increased the frequency of FAFSA verification. This is a process where about 30% of applicants are randomly selected to provide proof of every single number they entered on their forms. If you cannot provide the specific tax transcripts or asset statements requested within a narrow window, your financial aid package, including your scholarships, can be put on a permanent hold. We have seen case studies where students lost their housing because their verification paperwork was delayed by a single week. Understanding these administrative traps is essential, but there is an even more advanced level of scholarship acquisition: the multi-year leveraging strategy. This is the process of using your freshman year performance to trade up for even higher value awards in your sophomore and junior years. Most people think the scholarship hunt ends once you start college. In reality, some of the largest awards are reserved for continuing students. These are the students who have proven they can handle the rigors of university life. We are going to deconstruct how to audit your university's internal scholarship database every February, and how to use your first-year GPA to negotiate for an upgrade of your initial merit package. But first, we have to address the financial aid appeal letter, the most powerful single page you can write. If your initial offer isn't enough to make the school affordable, there is a specific, evidence-based way to ask for more money that doesn't sound like a request for a discount. We're going to look at the exact financial triggers that force a university to reconsider their offer, and how to present your case so the financial aid officer becomes your advocate rather than your gatekeeper. The financial aid appeal is technically known as a request for professional judgment. Under Section 479A of the Higher Education Act, financial aid administrators have the legal authority to adjust the data elements on a student's FAFSA to reflect their actual financial situation. This is not a loophole. It is a built-in mechanism designed to handle the reality that a family's financial life in 2026 might look nothing like their tax returns from 2 years prior. Most families view the financial aid award letter as a final invoice, but in the world of professional scholarship strategy, it is the beginning of a data-driven dialogue. To turn a financial aid officer into your advocate, you must move away from emotional pleas and toward verifiable evidence. Imagine a student in 2026 named David. David's family had a combined income of $95,000 in 2024, which served as the base year for his FAFSA. Based on that data, his student aid index was calculated, and his university offered a modest $5,000 grant. However, in January of 2026, David's mother, who was the primary earner, was laid off due to a corporate restructuring. Suddenly, the $95,000 figure on his FAFSA is a ghost. David's family is now surviving on unemployment benefits and a small savings account. If David simply accepts the initial $5,000 offer, he will likely be forced to take out high-interest private loans or drop out before the second semester. Historical trends show that students like David who provide immediate, Documented proof of a change in circumstances have a much higher probability of receiving a revised aid package. The first step in this process is identifying the specific financial trigger. These triggers typically fall into 4 categories: loss of employment, significant unreimbursed medical expenses, the death or disability of a wage earner, or a one-time financial windfall that artificially inflated the previous year's income. In David's case, the trigger is the loss of employment. He doesn't just call the office and say his mom lost her job. He gathers a termination letter from the employer, a record of the final severance pay, and the most recent unemployment benefit statement. He then drafts a professional judgment letter that quantifies the exact difference between the 2024 income and the projected 2026 income. This technical precision allows the financial aid officer to recalculate the student aid index with current data, which can potentially lead to a significant increase in Pell Grant eligibility and institutional need-based aid. Now, let's consider a different scenario involving merit aid, which is often more flexible than need-based aid. Imagine a student in 2026 named Jennifer. Jennifer is an exceptional student with a 3.9 GPA and a high SAT score. She was accepted into her top choice school, University A, which offered her a $10,000 merit scholarship. However, she was also accepted into University B, a direct competitor of University A in the same athletic conference and ranking tier. University B offered her $18,000 in merit aid. Jennifer's potential outcome depends on her ability to leverage this competing offer. This is where we use the competing offer tactic. Universities are highly concerned with their yield rate, the percentage of admitted students who actually enroll. If Jennifer is a student University A really wants, they would often rather find an extra $5,000 to $8,000 in their budget than lose her to a rival. Jennifer's appeal letter to University A should be professional and appreciative. She should state, "University A remains my first choice due to its specific undergraduate research program in molecular biology. However, as our family evaluates the long-term financial feasibility of this investment, the $8,000 gap between your offer and the offer from University B is a significant factor. Is there a process for a merit award reconsideration based on competing institutional offers?" By framing it as a question of feasibility, rather than a demand for more money, Jennifer signals that she is a serious candidate who is ready to commit if the numbers align. Case studies in 2026 show that private mid-tier colleges are the most responsive to these types of appeals because they have more discretion over their institutional discount rates. Large public state universities, conversely, often have rigid, formula-based merit tiers that are harder to move. However, even at a state school, there are departmental scholarships that may not have been fully allocated. Jennifer's next move is to contact the head of the molecular biology department directly to inquire about secondary endowed funds that are specifically reserved for incoming freshmen with high academic markers. The documentation required for a successful appeal is exhaustive. If you are appealing based on medical expenses, you cannot simply provide a list of bills. You must provide a summary that subtracts the amount covered by insurance and the 7.5% of adjusted gross income that the IRS considers the baseline for medical deductions. Only the amount exceeding that threshold is usually considered for a FAFSA adjustment. This level of detail is what separates a successful appeal from a rejected one. You are effectively acting as your own forensic accountant. Another critical trigger is the one-time windfall. Imagine if David's family had sold a home in 2024 or taken a one-time withdrawal from a retirement account to pay for an emergency. That money shows up as income on the FAFSA, making the family look much wealthier than they actually are. In the professional judgment request, you must ask the officer to exclude that specific non-recurring income from the calculation. This requires providing the closing disclosure from the house sale or the distribution statement from the 401k, along with proof that the funds are no longer available. The timing of these appeals is just as important as the content. The optimal window for an appeal is immediately after receiving the initial award letter, but before the national commitment deadline of May 1st. This is when universities are most anxious about hitting their enrollment targets. If you wait until July, the university's institutional aid budget may already be depleted, even if they agree that your financial situation has changed. In 2026, with many schools facing enrollment fluctuations, being early in the appeal queue is a major tactical advantage. Beyond the initial appeal, there is the concept of the multi-year financial audit. For many students, the financial aid package they get as a freshman is not the package they will have as a senior. Historically, families stop looking for money once the student is on campus. This is a mistake. Every year, new endowed scholarships are created by alumni and seniors graduate, leaving their previous awards up for grabs. A student who maintains a high GPA during their freshman year has fresh data to present. You can return to the financial aid office as a sophomore and present your university transcript as proof that you are a high-value asset to the school. Case studies have shown that students who consistently check in with their department scholarship coordinator can secure an additional $1,000 to $3,000 in retention grants or departmental awards that weren't available to them as incoming freshmen. This entire process of negotiation and appeal leads into the most controversial part of the scholarship world: the role of the private consultant and the scholarship search algorithm. In 2026, AI-driven platforms claim to find millions of dollars in obscure funds, but many of these are nothing more than marketing leads for student loan companies. You need to know how to distinguish between a legitimate philanthropic opportunity and a data mining operation. We are going to look at the specific red flags of scholarship scams and the verification of eligibility, steps that ensure you are applying to real organizations with actual money in the bank. But first, we need to address the community service trap, why 90% of students are volunteering the wrong way, and how to restructure your service hours to match the specific impact metrics that high-value foundations use to select their winners. This is the difference between helping out and leading change, and it is the key to unlocking the six-figure national awards. The community service trap is a widespread phenomenon where students believe that the sheer volume of hours performed translates directly into scholarship dollars. Historically, the average high school senior in the United States performs about 50 to 100 hours of community service. They might volunteer at a local hospital, participate in a weekend beach cleanup, or spend Saturday mornings at a food bank. While these are noble efforts, they often lack the specific quality that high-value scholarship committees, those awarding $25,000, $50,000, or even $100,000, are looking for scalable impact. In 2026, the selection committees for major national programs have shifted their focus towards social return on investment. They are no longer looking for a volunteer. They are looking for a founder or a systemic problem solver. Imagine a student named Leo in 2026. Leo wants to win the Coca-Cola Scholars Award, one of the most prestigious and competitive programs in the country. If Leo simply lists 200 hours of general animal shelter work, his application will likely be grouped with thousands of other high-achieving applicants. To change the potential outcome, Leo needs to demonstrate leadership and initiative that goes beyond passive participation. Instead of just walking dogs, Leo identifies a systemic problem. The local animal shelter has a 40% vacancy rate because their digital presence is non-existent, meaning animals are staying in the system longer than necessary. Leo recruits 5 other students to form a marketing task force. They spend the year creating high-quality video content for social media, which boosts the shelter's adoption rate by 65%. Additionally, they launch a digital crowdfunding campaign that secures $12,000 for medical supplies. This is the transition from helping out to leading change. Leo has now created impact metrics. When he writes his application, he does not just say that he loves animals or that he is a hard worker. He provides the data. He led a team of 5, increased adoption rates by 65%, and managed a $12,000 budget. This data-driven approach allows the committee to see Leo as a high-potential leader who can manage resources, people, and complex problems. In the eyes of a major foundation, Leo is a low-risk investment because he has already proven he can produce measurable results. The logic of big national foundations is fundamentally different from that of a local scholarship provider. National foundations are often legacy-driven. They want their scholars to be the chief executive officers, senators, and groundbreaking scientists of the next 30 years. When they award a 6-figure scholarship, they are effectively buying a stake in your future brand. Historical trends show that organizations such as the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation or the Elks National Foundation look for students who have reached the synthesis phase of their extracurricular life. This is where your academic interests, say environmental science, merges perfectly with your service work. Let's look at a case study of a niche national award, like the Davidson Fellows Scholarship. This program offers up to $50,000 to students who have completed a significant piece of work that contributes to their field. This is not just a high school project. It is a contribution to the body of knowledge. A student in 2026 might spend 2 years researching microplastics in local waterways, developing a low-cost filtration system for residential pipes, and then presenting that data to the City Council to influence local building codes. The Scholarship Committee is looking for a verifiable contribution. The step-by-step process for this involves identifying a gap in a field, conducting primary research or direct action, and then documenting the outcome with third-party validation, such as a news article, a letter from a civic leader, or a professional endorsement. However, as you aim for these high-tier awards, the risk of falling into scholarship scams increases. In 2026, with the proliferation of artificial intelligence in digital marketing, there has been a rise in ghost foundations. These are websites that look professional and offer easy scholarships in exchange for a small application fee or sensitive personal data. To protect your information and your finances, you must follow a strict verification of eligibility protocol. First, no legitimate scholarship will ever ask for a fee to apply. If they do, it is almost certainly a data mining operation or a direct financial scam. Second, you must check the foundation's tax-exempt status. You can use the Internal Revenue Service search tool to verify that the entity is a registered 501(c)(3) nonprofit. Third, look for historical transparency. Does the website list previous winners? Can you find those winners on professional networking sites to verify they actually received the funds? If a scholarship has no history and asks for an administrative fee, you should abandon the application immediately. Another critical element of the high-value scholarship hunt is narrative cohesion. Many students volunteer for causes they think sound good, rather than causes that align with their intended career path. In 2026, committees are looking for proof that your service is a fundamental part of your professional identity. Consider the case study of Mia, a student aiming for a career in public policy. Instead of general volunteering, Mia joins her city's youth advisory board. She spends 2 years advocating for a new public transit route that connects a low-income neighborhood to the local community college. She gathers 2,000 signatures, presents a budget proposal to the mayor, and successfully secures a pilot program for the route. When Mia applies for policy-focused awards, her impact metric is a literal bus route that didn't exist before her intervention. This is the gold standard of scholarship applications because it is undeniable, documented, and has a lasting effect on the community. To reach this level, you must understand the funnel strategy of application volume. You do not just apply for one big award and hope for the best. You treat the scholarship process like a professional sales funnel. At the top of the funnel, you have 50 to 100 micro-scholarships worth between $500 and $1,000. These require minimal effort because you are reusing a core, high-quality essay. In the middle of the funnel, you have 10 to 15 regional awards worth between $2,500 and $10,000. These require more customization and specific local references. At the bottom of the funnel, you have 2 or 3 moonshot national awards worth $25,000 or more. These are the awards you spend months preparing for. This diversification ensures that even if you do not hit a moonshot, you have enough micro and regional wins to significantly offset your educational costs. As we move into the actual execution phase, we have to address the administrative engine of your scholarship hunt. How do you manage dozens of different deadlines, 10 different versions of your essay, and 5 different recommenders without missing a critical window? The organizational system used by the most successful applicants in 2026 involves a specific type of tracker that goes far beyond a simple list. We are going to look at the automation tools that savvy students are using to track foundation updates, and the critical path method used to ensure every application is submitted in its most optimized state. But before you hit send on those applications, there is one more hurdle: the interview. For the big money, they will want to talk to you. And in the world of high-stakes scholarships, the interview is not just a conversation. It is a pressure test of your character and your data. We are going to deconstruct the 5 questions that determine who gets the check and who gets the rejection letter. The scholarship interview is the final crucible where the data on your application is personified. In the United States, once you reach the interview stage for a major award, the committee has already determined that you are academically qualified. They are no longer checking your GPA or your SAT scores. They are performing a high-stakes risk assessment. In 2026, foundations view their scholarship funds as social venture capital. They are looking for the highest possible return on their investment, measured in future impact, leadership, and the prestige you will eventually bring back to their organization. To navigate this, you must move past the idea of an interview as a conversation and view it as a demonstration of your strategic alignment with the donor's mission. Imagine a student in 2026 named Alex. Alex has been named a finalist for a $100,000 National Leadership Scholarship. He is sitting in a virtual waiting room, his heart rate elevated, waiting for a panel of 5 board members to appear on his screen. Historically, students like Alex make the mistake of preparing for general interview questions. They practice their handshake or their digital eye contact, but they fail to deconstruct the specific psychological triggers the committee is looking for. The interview is designed to test your resilience, your deep field knowledge, and your ability to handle the cognitive dissonance of being a high achiever who still has room to grow. The first question you will almost certainly face is, why you? This is not an invitation to list your accomplishments again. The committee has your resume in front of them. This is a question about your value proposition. A standard failing response would be, you should choose me because I am a hard worker and I am dedicated to my studies. In 2026, every finalist is a hard worker. To shift the potential outcomes in your favor, you must use the stakeholder alignment method. Alex should answer by identifying a specific goal of the foundation, for example, increasing the number of first-generation students in data science, and then explaining how his unique background in community organizing combined with his technical skills makes him the perfect vehicle for that mission. He is essentially saying, if you give me this money, I will be the person who fulfills your organization's purpose in the real world. The second question is the resilience audit. Tell us about a time you failed and how you handled it. Historical trends show that students often try to pivot a fake failure into a success, such as saying they worked too hard and got tired. Committees see through this immediately. They are looking for the scar, not the wound. They want to see that you have experienced a genuine, systemic collapse or a personal setback, and that you possess the technical and emotional tools to perform a postmortem and move forward. A masterclass response involves describing a project that actually failed, perhaps a nonprofit initiative that didn't meet its fundraising goal, and then explaining the data-driven reasons why it failed. Alex might explain how he miscalculated the donor demographic and what specific changes he made to his outreach strategy for the next project. This shows accountability and the ability to learn from data, which are high-value leadership traits. The third question is the field competence test. What is the most significant challenge facing your intended field of study over the next 10 years? This question is designed to separate the students who are just good at school from the students who are true scholars. In 2026, if you are a STEM major, you cannot give a generic answer about technology. You need to speak to the ethics of artificial intelligence, the sustainability of hardware supply chains, or the democratization of data in developing nations. You must demonstrate that you are reading professional journals and following industry trends. This shows the committee that you are already operating at a professional level, and that their scholarship is not just paying for a degree, but for the advancement of the field itself. The fourth question is the persistence trap. If you do not receive this scholarship, what is your plan? This is a test of your obsession with your goals. If you say, I won't be able to go to college, you have signaled that your success is entirely dependent on external funding, which makes you a high-risk investment. If you say, I will find another way, but it might take longer, you show that your mission is inevitable. The best response is to outline your contingency plan, perhaps attending a state school while working part-time, and then explaining how the scholarship wouldn't just make college possible, but would act as a catalyst to accelerate your impact. You are showing them that you are going to change the world regardless, but with their help, you can do it 10 times faster. The fifth and final question is the inverted interview. What questions do you have for us? This is where 70% of students fail by saying they have no questions or by asking something basic about the timeline of the decision. In 2026, a high-level candidate uses this as a final opportunity to demonstrate intelligence and long-term thinking. Alex should ask about the Foundation's 5-year vision for their alumni network, or how they measure the success of their scholars 20 years after graduation. This signals that you are thinking about a lifelong relationship with the organization, not just a one-time transaction. Beyond the questions, the mechanics of the 2026 digital interview are critical. We are seeing a historical trend where students lose points due to technical friction. You must treat the digital environment as a professional set. This means having a wired internet connection to avoid lag, using a high-fidelity external microphone, and ensuring your lighting is positioned at a 45-degree angle to your face to eliminate shadows. You should also be aware of the gaze correction features in modern video software. While they can help you appear to be making eye contact, they can also create an uncanny valley effect if overused. The goal is to appear as natural and present as possible, despite the digital barrier. After the interview, the process is not over. The 24-hour rule is a standard in the United States. You must send a personalized, professional thank you email to each member of the panel. This is not a generic thank you for your time. It is a final touch point where you reference a specific moment or a specific question from the interview. If one of the board members asked a particularly insightful question about your research, you mention it. You might even include a link to a relevant article you discussed. This reinforces your engagement and ensures that your name remains at the top of their mind as they move into the final deliberation phase. Case studies of successful applicants show that the deliberation phase is often where the committee looks for tiebreakers. If they have two candidates with equal stats and equal interview performance, they look for the narrative tiebreaker. This is the candidate who has the most cohesive full-circle story. Every part of their application, from their FAFSA data to their service hours to their final interview answer, points toward a single undeniable conclusion. They are the most logical person to receive the award. As we move into the final stages of this masterclass, we have to look at what happens after the check is signed. There is a hidden phase of scholarship management that involves the legalities of the award letter, the technicalities of the bursar's office, and the audit that can happen at the end of every semester. Most people think winning the scholarship is the end of the journey, but for many, it is just the beginning of a complex relationship with institutional finance. We are going to deconstruct how to read a financial aid audit trail and how to ensure your school is actually applying the funds the way they promised. But first, we need to address the transfer trap. What happens to your scholarship money if you realize you picked the wrong school and need to move your credits to a different institution? This is where the real financial complexity begins. And if you don't have the right paperwork, you could lose everything you've worked for. The transfer trap is a mathematical and administrative reality that catches thousands of American students every year, particularly those who realize midway through their sophomore year that their chosen institution is no longer a fit. In the United States, there is a fundamental distinction between institutional portability and external portability. When you win a scholarship from a university, that money is effectively a discount on their specific product. It is not cash in your pocket that you can take to another school. Historically, institutional aid is the largest source of funding for students, yet it is the least portable. If you have been awarded $20,000 a year by a private college in New England and you decide to transfer to a state school in California, that $20,000 vanishes the moment you withdraw. You are effectively starting your financial aid journey from zero at the new institution. Imagine a student in 2026 named Brandon. Brandon is a computer science major who received a significant merit package to attend a small, high-cost private university. By the end of his first year, Brandon realizes the department lacks the specific research facilities he needs for quantum computing. He decides to transfer to a large, prestigious state university. Brandon assumes his 3.9 GPA will allow him to carry his scholarship over. But he quickly discovers that the state university has a completely different endowment structure. Because he is now a transfer student rather than an incoming freshman, he is ineligible for 90% of the new school's merit-based scholarships, which are historically reserved for first-time applicants to boost the school's initial enrollment data. Brandon is now facing a sticker price with no institutional support, despite his high academic performance. This is the reality of the transfer market. Transfer students are often seen as captured revenue by universities, meaning the schools have less incentive to offer deep discounts compared to the fierce competition for high school seniors. To navigate this, you must understand the technicalities of the consortium agreement. This is a legal contract between two schools that allows a student to be enrolled at both institutions simultaneously, while receiving federal and sometimes institutional aid based on the combined credit hours. In 2026, we are seeing a trend where students use consortium agreements to take specialized, lower-cost classes at a community college while maintaining their scholarship status at a four-year university. However, if Brandon had tried to use this to bridge his transfer, he would have needed to ensure the home institution, the school giving the degree, approved every single credit. If even one credit fails to transfer, it can trigger a recalculation of his enrollment status. If he falls below 12 transferable credits, he is no longer considered full-time, and his aid can be prorated or canceled. This leads us to the most dangerous financial mechanic in higher education: the return of Title IV funds, or R2T4. Under federal law, if a student withdraws from a university before completing 60% of the semester, the school is required to calculate how much of the federal aid, including Pell Grants and Stafford loans, the student actually earned. If you leave at the 30% mark, the university must return 70% of your federal funding to the government. This creates an immediate, massive debt on your student account because the university has already spent that money on your tuition and fees. You will not be allowed to receive your official transcripts to send to your new school until that balance is paid in full. This is the administrative hostage situation that prevents students from transferring. Case studies show that students who withdraw without consulting a financial aid officer about the R2T4 date often end up with a surprise bill of $10,000 or more, effectively ending their educational career. Step by step, if you are planning a transfer in 2026, you must first perform a bursar's audit. You need to look at your student account statement and distinguish between pending aid and disbursed aid. Pending aid is an estimate. It is the school saying they expect the money to arrive. Disbursed aid is money that has actually been applied to your balance. During a transfer, pending aid is the first thing to disappear. You must also contact any private, external foundations that have awarded you money. Unlike university money, private scholarships from organizations like the Rotary Club or a local credit union are often portable. However, they require a formal transfer of funds request. This involves sending the foundation a new proof of enrollment and a revised cost of attendance from the new school. If the new school is significantly cheaper, the foundation may reduce your award to ensure you don't exceed the federal over-award limit. Another critical factor is the gap year or deferment risk. If you decide to take a semester off between schools, most scholarships will consider this a break in continuous enrollment. Historically, this is a clause that allows foundations and universities to terminate an award permanently. In 2026, many students are attempting to take mental health gaps or internship gaps without realizing that their scholarship contract requires 4 years of uninterrupted study. To protect your funding, you must secure a formal leave of absence approval from both the university and any private donors. This paperwork must be filed before you stop attending classes. A verbal agreement with a counselor is not enough. Without a signed deferment agreement, you are essentially forfeiting your future funding. For students like Brandon, the only way to mitigate the loss of institutional aid during a transfer is the Transfer-Specific Merit Scholarship. Some universities have realized that high-achieving transfer students are a valuable asset for their graduation rate statistics. These schools offer a separate, smaller pool of money specifically for students with a 3.5 GPA or higher from their previous institution. However, the deadlines for these are often much earlier than the general transfer application deadline. If you apply for transfer in April for a September start, you have likely already missed the window for the most lucrative transfer awards. We also have to address the refund trap. When a scholarship exceeds the cost of tuition, the university issues a refund check to the student for living expenses. In 2026, many students use this money to pay for off-campus housing or high-end technology. However, if your enrollment status changes, if you drop a class or the university audits your account and finds an error, they can claw back that refund. They don't just ask for it back. They place a debit on your account that must be paid before you can register for the next semester. This is why you must maintain a liquidity reserve. You should never spend a scholarship refund the day you get it. Historically, the safest move is to keep those funds in a separate high-yield account until the add/drop period for the following semester has passed. Understanding the movement of money between institutions is the most advanced level of scholarship management. It requires you to be part student, part paralegal, and part accountant. But even if you stay at one school and keep all your funding, there is a final phase that most people ignore until it is too late: the graduation surplus. What happens if you have worked the system so well that you have more scholarship money than you need? Can you keep the cash? Can you use it for medical school or a master's degree? There is a technical process for rolling over funds and a specific way to handle the tax implications of a scholarship surplus that can either set you up for a debt-free graduate education or leave you with an audit from the IRS. We are going to look at the exit strategy for scholarship winners and how to ensure your undergraduate success fuels your professional career. But before you graduate, you need to know about the alumni clawback, the rare but real scenario where a school tries to bill you for a scholarship years after you've left. The concept of the alumni clawback is one of the most obscure and legally complex aspects of the American scholarship system. Yet in 2026, it is becoming a critical talking point for educational policy experts. To understand this, we must look at the specific legal language regarding moral turpitude or conduct clauses found in high-value scholarship contracts. Historically, these clauses were rarely enforced, but with the hyperdigitization of our lives, universities and private foundations have gained the ability to monitor the long-term brand alignment of their scholars. If a student receives a prestigious 4-year award and 3 years after graduation, is involved in a high-profile legal scandal or a violation of the foundation's stated ethics policy, some contracts contain provisions that allow the donor to seek restitution. This is not a common outcome, but it serves as a reminder that a scholarship is often a lifetime contract of representation. You are not just a student. You are a permanent ambassador for the entity that funded your degree. Imagine a graduate named Marcus in 2026. Marcus was a top scholar who received a full-ride leadership award from a private foundation dedicated to ethical governance. 2 years into his career, Marcus is found to have committed significant professional misconduct that contradicts the foundation's core mission. Under a strictly worded conduct clause, the foundation could technically argue that the scholarship was contingent upon a commitment to these values and attempt to convert the grant into a loan. While litigation over such matters is rare due to the high cost of legal fees, the potential outcome can involve the revocation of alumni status and the removal of the scholarship from the student's official academic record. This underscores the importance of reading the exit clauses in your award letters. Most students focus on how to get the money, but the most sophisticated applicants focus on how to keep the money protected from future administrative challenges. This leads us to the graduation surplus and the exit strategy. In the United States, if you have managed to stack multiple scholarships so effectively that your total aid exceeds your cost of attendance, you may be left with a surplus. In 2026, the question of what to do with this extra money is a high-level financial puzzle. Historically, many students simply take the refund check and spend it on lifestyle upgrades. However, from a technical perspective, this is a missed opportunity for long-term educational funding. If you have a surplus, you need to understand the concept of scholarship carryover. While most institutional aid is use it or lose it for a specific semester, some private foundations allow you to defer a portion of your award for graduate school. Let's look at a case study of a student named Isabella. Isabella won a $25,000 annual scholarship but attended a university where her total costs were only $20,000 because she was also working as a resident assistant, which covered her housing. Isabella has a $5,000 annual surplus. Instead of taking this as a taxable cash refund, Isabella contacts her private donor and requests a formal award modification. She asks if the foundation can hold the surplus in an escrow account or a dedicated 529 plan for her future medical school expenses. Because foundations are often looking for ways to support their scholars' long-term success, many are willing to accommodate this if it is requested before the funds are disbursed to the school. This effectively turns a 4-year scholarship into a 6-year or 8-year funding vehicle. Step by step, managing a surplus requires you to navigate the 1098-T form. This is the tuition statement the university sends to the IRS and to you every year. Box 1 shows payments received for qualified tuition, while Box 5 shows the total amount of scholarships or grants. If the number in Box 5 is higher than the number in Box 1, the IRS assumes you have received taxable income. In 2026, the tax implications of a large scholarship surplus can be significant. If Isabella takes that $5,000 surplus as cash, she may owe several $100s in taxes. To mitigate this, Isabella maintains a meticulously detailed file of her qualified education expenses that weren't on her tuition bill. This includes required hardware like a $2,000 specialized engineering laptop, lab fees, and even specific required software subscriptions. By documenting these expenses, she can legally reduce the taxable portion of her scholarship refund, ensuring that more of the money goes toward her education rather than the government. Furthermore, we must address the bridge to graduate school strategy. Many of the most lucrative scholarships in America are actually sequential awards. For example, the Truman Scholarship or the Goldwater Scholarship are prestigious undergraduate awards that serve as a direct pipeline to graduate funding. In 2026, the data shows that winning one of these national undergraduate awards increases the probability of receiving a full tuition fellowship for a PhD or an MD by over 400%. This is because these awards function as a pre-approval for your intellect and character. High-level graduate programs use these undergraduate wins as a screening tool. If you have already been vetted by a national foundation, the graduate school's financial aid office is far more likely to offer you a discretionary dean's fellowship to recruit you to their campus. Now, consider the technicality of the post-graduation audit. Some state-funded scholarships, particularly those in fields like nursing, teaching, or rural medicine, come with a service obligation. If you receive $40,000 in funding to become a teacher in a high-need area, you are signing a contract to work in that field for a specified number of years after graduation. In 2026, the tracking of these service obligations has become automated. If you graduate and decide to take a high-paying job in a corporate office instead of the classroom, the state's Department of Education will trigger a grant-to-loan conversion. This means your $40,000 scholarship instantly becomes a $40,000 loan with accrued interest. Historically, students have tried to ignore these obligations, but with modern credit reporting, these conversions can devastate your credit score within months of the violation. To avoid this, you must conduct a compliance review every 6 months during your first few years of employment. This involves submitting a certificate of service signed by your employer to the scholarship administrator. This is the defensive phase of scholarship management. You have already won the money and you have already spent it. Now you are earning it through your professional output. If you are a student in 2026 entering a field with these types of awards, you must keep a digital trail of every hour worked in every employer verification form. As we approach the end of this deep dive, we have to look at the broader impact of the American scholarship system on your personal brand. In 2026, a scholarship portfolio is as valuable as a professional portfolio. When you apply for your first job at a top-tier firm, listing that you were a National Merit Scholar or a Hispanic Recognition Program recipient isn't just a line on a resume. It is a signal of your ability to navigate complex, competitive systems. We are going to deconstruct how to leverage your scholarship history during salary negotiations and how to use your donor network for professional mentorship that can lead to six-figure career outcomes. But before we wrap up, there is one final critical piece of the puzzle. Most people think scholarships are for the young, but in 2026, the most rapidly growing sector of the scholarship market is for non-traditional and returning students. There is a massive untapped reservoir of funding for people who are starting their education at 30, 40, or 50 years old. The rules for these awards are completely different, and the competition is often lower because the applicants are so specialized. We are going to look at the lifetime learning scholarships and the specific way to bridge the gap between your professional experience and your academic goals. Finally, we will reveal the master list of the top 10 high-impact actions you must take this week to secure your financial future. This is the culmination of everything we have discussed, the moment where theory becomes reality, and where you start the process of reclaiming your education from the debt machine. We're going to show you exactly how to send that first email, how to audit your first foundation, and how to ensure that your 2026 tuition bill is the last one you ever have to worry about. The transition from the academic world to the professional world is the final phase of the scholarship life cycle. In 2026, the marketplace for talent has become so saturated that a degree alone often serves only as a baseline. The differentiator is the narrative of excellence that your scholarship history provides. When we look at the lifetime value of these awards, we must look beyond the immediate tuition relief and toward the concept of social capital. Many of the most prestigious scholarship programs in the United States, such as the Rhodes, the Marshall, or the Soros Fellowships, are not just financial transactions. They are entry points into a lifelong network of influence. Imagine a professional in 2026 named Robert. Robert is 32 years old and is considering returning to school for an executive MBA to pivot his career into sustainable infrastructure. Most people in Robert's position assume that scholarships are for 18-year-olds with high SAT scores. However, historical trends show that the adult learner and non-traditional student market is actually one of the most underserved segments of the scholarship ecosystem. There are billions of dollars allocated by corporations and foundations specifically to upskill the American workforce. For Robert, the strategy is not about high school transcripts. It is about his professional impact statement. Robert's case study involves identifying the specific industry associations in his field, like the American Society of Civil Engineers, which offer thousands of dollars in continuing education grants to members who are seeking advanced degrees. Step by step, the approach for a non-traditional student involves a work-life audit. You look at your current employer's tuition reimbursement policy, which is essentially a private, internal scholarship. In 2026, many U.S. companies have increased their reimbursement limits to $5,250 per year, the maximum tax-free amount allowed under IRS Section 127. If Robert combines this with a professional association grant and an institutional scholarship from a university's night program, he can reduce his out-of-pocket costs by 60 to 70%. This is the professional stacking method. and it is the key to lifetime learning without incurring late career debt. But how do you move from theory to action right now? The master list of high-impact actions begins with the digital audit of your own brand. In 2026, scholarship committees will search your name. If your social media presence or public digital trail contradicts the values of the foundation you are applying to, your application will be discarded before it is even read. You must ensure that your LinkedIn profile is updated with the keywords that match the scholarship's mission. If you are applying for a leadership award, your profile should highlight your project management experience and your community impact metrics, not just your job titles. The second action is the foundation outreach. Do not wait for an application window to open. Use the information interview technique we discussed for Ghost Awards. Send 3 emails this week to the program coordinators of local foundations. Ask about their long-term scholarship goals, and if they have any upcoming opportunities for non-traditional or gap year students. These early inquiries often lead to being placed on a priority notification list. The third action is the transcript and FAFSA preparation. In 2026, you should have your tax data and your academic records in a single, encrypted digital folder. This allows you to respond to late-cycle opportunities within hours. Historical trends show that foundations sometimes have a sudden surplus of funds due to a recipient declining an award at the last minute. If you can submit a complete, high-quality application in 24 hours because your materials were already prepared, you are in the top 1% of candidates. The fourth action is the recommender cultivation. You need a stable of 5 different recommenders who can speak to different aspects of your character. 1 for academic rigor, 1 for community leadership, 1 for professional work ethic, and 2 for personal resilience. In 2026, you should provide these individuals with a scholarship portfolio that includes the specific prompts they need to address. This ensures that their letters are not generic, but are precision-engineered to trigger the committee's selection filters. As we look at the broader historical trends, the American scholarship system is evolving into a more meritocratic, but also more complex machine. The potential outcomes for those who master this machine are profound. We are talking about the ability to enter the workforce with zero debt, a high-value professional network, and a brand that is already recognized by national foundations. This is the ultimate competitive advantage in the 2026 economy. But what happens after you hit submit? What happens when the first rejection letter arrives? Or worse, what happens when you win, but the university's financial aid office makes a clerical error that threatens your funding? The journey doesn't end with an award letter. It continues through every semester of your education. You must become the chief financial officer of your own life. You must audit your bursar's statement every month. You must maintain your GPA with the same intensity that you used to win the money. And you must never stop looking for the next opportunity. Case studies of the most successful debt-free scholars show a common trait. They never viewed a scholarship as a gift. They viewed it as a partnership. They kept their donors updated on their progress. They sent holiday cards with academic updates. They volunteered for the foundation's marketing events. This donor stewardship is what leads to follow-on funding for graduate school and job placements after graduation. You are building a relationship with a patron, and in 2026, patronage is the most powerful force in education. In this masterclass, we have deconstructed the institutional discount rates, the narrative archetypes of the perfect essay, the psychological triggers of the interview, the legal traps of the transfer process, and the technicalities of the tax code. You now have the blueprint. The billions of dollars in unclaimed aid are not a myth. They are a result of a lack of technical knowledge among the general public. You now possess that knowledge. The next step is for you to begin your own data-driven search. Start with your local zip code, move to your parent's employer, then to your specific university department, and finally to the national moonshots. Use the impact metrics we discussed. Document your failures as well as your successes. And remember that in the United States, the price of education is a variable, not a constant. It is a number that can be negotiated, subsidized, and ultimately neutralized by anyone with the discipline to treat the scholarship hunt as a professional endeavor. We have covered the mechanics of the how, but the why is just as important. You are doing this to claim your future. You are doing this to ensure that your career choices are driven by your passion and your talent, not by a monthly loan payment that restricts your freedom. This is the end of the masterclass, but it is the beginning of your implementation phase. The 2026 academic year is approaching, and the funding cycles are already in motion. It is time to move past the myths of the lottery and start the clinical, strategic process of securing your education. Your scholarship journey starts with the very next email you send. Take the data, apply the strategies, and change your financial trajectory forever.